administrator, as a global level, you could manage all the teams and channels, including private channels, from your Teams admin portal. So you could create or delete the private channels from your Teams admin center. You can do everything that you could do for the private channels at the team level or Teams app level from the admin center as well. You could also add and remove members, and I'll show you some of those demos as well. If you're one of the team administrator, what you would see from the team admin center versus in your teams. There's also PowerShell and GraphView API support as well for creating and managing private channels. Now, in terms of channel owners and the settings, as I said, private channel owners manage the membership and the lifecycle of the private channel. So as an owner, even though my team administrator decided that I could create a team and private channels, as an owner, I could restrict who can create private channels in my specific team. Now, when it comes to owner of the private channel, if you allow members to create a private channels, members can exclude existing team owner from the private channel. So if the group of people are a member of a team, they could create a private channel and exclude the owner from that private channel. And that will only allow team owner to just read what they can see there's a private channel, but they cannot see any content. They cannot see the files and the conversation. So basically, owners can read the metadata, but if they're not part of the private channel, they cannot see any of the content. Now, initially, when it creates a private channel, it inherits settings from the team. So just like how the teams has a setting, you could also have certain settings at the private channel level that could be different than your Teams level setting. But the default at the start, it will inherit settings from the team, whatever the default setting is, for the member permission to the admissions to the emojis and whatnot. For example, if my team owner doesn't allow us to use emojis, you could create a private channel and then you can use emojis there. So things like that. Like those are the settings are different. You have flexibility to have a different setting at the private channel level. My apologies if you're asking any question right now, I can't see them, but I certainly would take a pause and then take a look at any questions if there are any and answer them once my slides are done. When it comes to team owners and private channels, team owners can control if the members can create private channel, as we discussed right now. And we also discussed that the team owners can see the names, then the last activity, and the owners of all the private channels in the team. So basically just the metadata. So they can see there's a private channel, but they cannot see the content. Now, team owner can delete a team or individual private channels without being a member. So because given the fact they are the team owner and the private channel is the child of logically of that specific team, they can manage those private channels in terms of deleting it. Now, in terms of removing a member from a team, so as I said initially, that if you wanted to add someone to the private channel, they must be part of that specific team first, and then you can add them. If I, as an owner, if I remove a member, a specific member, and if that member is a member of or the owner of a private channel, they would be removed as well. Now, there's one caveat to that. If that member that is getting removed is the last owner of the private channel, because private channel has a separate owners as compared to the team owner, and if your person that is getting removed is the last owner of that private channel, then it will restrict owner from removing that member from the team. So you have to have an owner of the private channel before removing it. In terms of apps, and actually before we go to the apps, one more thing that I wanted to cover here. Now, for example, instead of owner removing a member, if a member decided to leave an organization and account is getting disabled, that means, and if that person is the last owner of the private channel, then Teams would automatically promote one of the existing member to the owner. Now, there's no logic as to what Microsoft's logic behind the scene or in terms of promoting the owner, but that's something that you need to be careful. And you can, as a team administrator, you can always manage, add more owners to the private channel if need be. Now, in terms of apps into private channels, the tabs and the connectors are supported. An app must be installed in the team first before they can be used at the private channel. Obviously, you can't just simply add an app without being part of the team. Bots and the message extension support would be coming later. Now, there is things like planner, forms, the teams level meetings. Those are still, or channel level meetings are still not supported, and that feature should be coming later as well. When it comes to files in private channel files, when you start sharing files or storing files in the private channel, those are shared or stored in a specific, its own site collection. So it's not part of the same site collection that the team creates. So when we create a team, behind the scene, it creates a Sharpening Site collection. And all the standard channel content is stored under a default document library called documents or shared documents, and it creates a folder for each channel. When it comes to private channel, it actually creates a brand new Sharpening Site or site collection, if you will, behind the scene. And the content is stored on that Sharpening Site, separate from the default site collection that gets created as part of the team. And the reason for that is because the content needs to be decoupled from, because anyone who's the team owner gets the site collection admin, like sort of got access to that site. So even if you would restrict permission at the document library level, a separate document library, they will still be able to access it. So keep that content secure and private. There's a new, so if you have 30, and there should be a valid reason to have 30 private channels in a team, you would have 30 site collection that gets created as part of that. The site is named as the team name dash the channel name. So whatever the channel name, private channel name, so that would be your site title. And it comes with the default document library and the default page. I think initially it didn't come with the site pages, but now you could use that site as a standard Sharpening Site, basically. There's a different template that's being used called Teams Channel #0, but now it has pretty much all the bells and whistles that you would get in a specific site collection as part of the team. The life cycle of the site collection is tied to the private channel. What that means is when the site collection gets created for the private channel, it's in the same geo as the team, and it inherits the guest permission on create. So this is very important. What I mean by that is every site collection or every Sharpening Site has some setting for the guest access. As to what's the setting for the guest access? Can anyone invite guest access? Can guest access content see the content? Whatever the setting that may be for the site at the team, when the team gets created, it inherits at the time of creation of the private channel. Once it's created, it's decoupled. It's not going to be syncing those settings from the parent site. So once the private channel gets created, and if you go and change the external sharing or guest access sharing to none at the parent, but initially that was allowed guest, then your private channels would still be using the initial setting. It's not syncing on the fly based on the change. Just at the time of creation, it just inherits whatever the setting is at the parent site level, or I would just call it the team site level. You could always manage that setting through PowerShell. There's no GUI or user interface as of today. These private channel sites are hidden from SharePoint Admin Center for a reason, because to remove the clutter, if there's lots of private channels in your tenant, those would show up in your admin center and then might be challenging in terms of separating them. So right now there's no user interface to manage private channels from the SharePoint Admin Center, but you can always use the PowerShell to change a privacy setting or any other settings that you wanted to change for the private channel site collections. The membership and the data classification of the site collection is also kept in sync with the team. So what I mean by that is when you create a private channel, there would be certain members and there would be certain owners. And that creates a group in SharePoint called, when the SharePoint site gets created, it has 3 groups: visitors, members, and owners. Owners and members group are kept in sync with Teams members or private channel members and owners. If you decide to go and add a new member to your SharePoint group, it's going to, within 4 hours, going to remove that member because it's not in sync with the Teams. So if you have a scenario where you wanted to give someone an access to that private channel site content, but not to the team, then stay clear of owner and members. Go add them to the visitor, create a new group maybe, but stay clear of members and owners. Members and owners group at the SharePoint level are strictly in sync with team members and owners permission. You can't have a different members in the SharePoint site level compared to the private channels, and same applies for the owners. So even if you would make that change, it's going to go and add that back. Okay. All right, site management. Yeah, as I said, you can manage that through PowerShell. You could filter all the sites that's using a template team channel #0. And those sites, and anything that any site that is associated with the private channel is hidden from the SharePoint Admin Center. And as I already mentioned this, any direct changes to the owners and the members group, not anything else, that would be overwritten and would be synced with private channel owners and members. You can use visitors group or a new group if you need to grant user access. Now, there's also another scenario where you decide to delete, or someone decides to delete the SharePoint site that is associated with the private channel. If that happens, it will also be retrieved again within 4 hours and connected back to the private channel. So you can't just literally delete a SharePoint site while your private channel is still active. So if you delete a SharePoint site, within 4 hours, it will go and then grab that site back and connect back to the private channels that it belonged to. So if you delete a private channel, it will delete the SharePoint site. If you delete a private channel and restore the private channel again within the 30 days, the SharePoint site would be restored as well. If you delete a private channel and do not restore up to, say, 30 days, and then later restore a SharePoint site for some other ways, then your SharePoint site would be separate and not connected to any private channel. So these are some things that you need to keep in mind for site management, that the site deletion and the owners and members permission are tightly coupled, very, very tightly coupled with your private channel lifecycle. When it comes to information protection, EDiscovery support for channels. So as you can see that when it comes to teams, like the standard teams and standard channels, all the information for the messages for the compliance reasons are stored in the group mailbox, and the documents are at the team site. Now, because it's a private channel, it doesn't store all the messages or conversations to the group mailbox. It actually stores to individual users' mailbox, and the content goes to the SharePoint site associated with that private channel. So whenever you're doing an EDiscovery, make sure that you're including private channel mailbox or for the users' member mailboxes, and SharePoint site collection that is associated with that private channel. Now, in terms of retention, default retention policy for your primary site would be applied and can be managed through PowerShell if you wanted to override and apply to different. So that's pretty much high-level overview of your private channels. We'll take a look at the demo in maybe a couple of minutes. And the last slide, and let me see if there's a question on this. But before I go to the question, let's just quickly talk about Teams Connect or shared channel. Actually, I wanted to talk a lot about this today, but as I said, given the fact that this feature has been delayed, all the information is still in private preview and or private beta, hence won't be able to share any of those information other than what was shared at the Ignite. And this is what was shared at the Ignite, that sometime this year, hopefully, you could share just any channel with your internal members or external members, provided that those settings are turned on. Now, what shared channel would allow would, once someone accepts that invitation, the shared channel would appear into their Teams application, just like any other Teams and channels, and they would be able to access that shared channel. If they are external members, they don't need to switch tenant. So for example, if you're sharing just a channel with an internal member, they will see the team name and just the channel that you have shared with them. So that you don't need to add them directly to the team. You could just share a channel with an individual, and when you share internally, they will see the team, and any shared channel within the team that you have shared with them would appear in their team application, and that will allow them to access the document, collaborate, co-authoring, accessing the conversations and channel meetings, things like that you could do. Now, when you share it externally, it's just like sending an invitation to external user, and then they would have to accept the invitation. Once they accept the invitation, same thing. If within their primary tenant, they will see the teams appearing within their Teams application, and any of the shared channel, one or more that they have accepted invitation, would appear into their, just as you can see, I've copied this from the Microsoft website as part of the Ignite blog, but it will appear into their Teams application as a shared channel. I have not now before, just like the private channel, there is a separate SharePoint site that gets created for all shared channels. So as I say, the private channel creates a new SharePoint site. A shared channel also creates a SharePoint site, and the membership and the permission is also tightly coupled with, just like the private channel. So when it comes to the SharePoint site and the lifecycle behavior, in terms of permission, it's very, very tightly coupled with your shared channel membership as well. Anything else I can talk about there? I think that this was pretty much it. Admins would have granular controls in terms of allowing their organization to stay on how external users are invited and things like that. Those would be at the admin level settings. But you get the idea that the shared channel, as opposed to private channel, a user doesn't need to be part of the entire team. You could just simply share a channel with an external user. I've included a link just so when I shared the slide deck, there's a great blog by Tony that goes into lots of details about everything that you need to know about the shared channel or Teams Connect. Certainly you should read it. Anything that you wanted to know today that is publicly available information is all covered within that blog post. So certainly we'll encourage you to go and take a look at that. Okay, so let me take a look if there's any questions. So far, no questions. So let's just jump on to the demo. So here on my Teams, so as an user, I'm currently logged in as a member of this commercial lending. So let's say I'm currently logged in as a user here. I'm not the admin of this commercial lending site. You could just click and then add a channel. When you click add a channel, you would have option. You can see the default. One more thing for both private channel and the Teams Connect. You can't convert an existing standard channel to either the private channel or shared channel. You need to create from scratch. So you can't, there's no option to convert something. So when you're creating a new channel, the default would be standard. You would have an option to create a private channel, and you can see accessible only to a specific group of people within your team. And for private channel, the requirement is those users needs to be added at the team level first. So if I would just start typing a user here, let me see if I have, let's see who the members are, manage team. So we have Joni as owner and Megan, Deborah. Okay, so let's just go. So basically you could only add these people. You can't go and add someone else that is not already a member of that team. So we'll just add a channel. I will say, oh, sorry, you just channel name, sorry. M365 2021. You could decide if you wanted to show that channel in everyone's list. You could skip that if you wanted to, so click add. What it's going to do is you're going to go in and create a channel that is, did we say a private channel, or maybe left it standard, my bad. I'll just use the existing one, or maybe you can just get started again. So we'll just add a channel, change it to private. Channel. Next. And here, because we are adding a private channel, it will ask us to add a members, because by default, whoever is creating, I'm the member of the team, but I'm creating a private channel. I'll be the owner of that private channel, and now I can start typing the name. And since I mistakenly click OK, I could add more members at that point. Now, as you can see, that private channel, when you create it, would have that icon showing you that it's a private channel. And you only see this private channel if you're part of that channel. As a member of that team, you will only see private channels that you're part of. If you're not part of any of the private teams, you would not see them here. As an owner, you could see them as part of the managed teams, but as a member, you would not see them here. Now, quickly, let's just jump onto, and I'm going to switch back and forth, but if I would go to my Teams Admin Center, and I'll say Manage Team, and we have commercial lending, that's the team that we are currently working with. When I click on that, and click on channels, you would see that it will show you the channels, and that includes the private channels that I would see them here. It's currently not updated, but you will see that private channels that I'm seeing here that I might not even be part of as an admin. And when I click on the private channels, I would be able to manage the membership from here. To add someone to an owner, I can make Alex an owner here. So you as a team administrator, you get the idea. You could manage the private channels from the admin center. Now, jumping back, at the team level, as an owner, owners can change the setting of the team to set the member permission, as we talked about it, to say my members cannot create a private channel. So that could be one of the settings that owners can turn on and off. At the same time, as a team administrator, you can set a policy. So there's a team's policies here under Teams Admin Center. By default, in this tenant, you could see that I have just a global, which is when I click on that, would allow create private channels to on, right? So that's by default is on, but I could create a new policy and I would just turn that off, or I could turn the global, I could turn this here private channels off. As soon as I turn this off, no one in my tenant can create private channels until I would go and add a new Teams policy and then assign it to group of users. And that's when users would be able to create private channels. So you could start, if you haven't started using private channels, my recommendation is to start cautiously and then start assigning a group of users policy that who can create private channels, collect some feedback so that you can properly manage it. So make sure that if you're going that route, you actually creating a new policy. So we'll say use private channel policy. We'll just leave that on. And once you create it, you could go and then group. You could use like some of the policies you would see that as Microsoft currently working on. Some of the policies would allow you to add a distribution list or a security group directly from here. Some of the other policies you still need to use PowerShell, so you will see that. But in this case, you could add a group directly here. When the group gets assigned to a policy, it takes some time for propagating to all the users, depending on the group member size. But if it's a larger group, it could take some time to propagate to all the users. Now, one thing that you need to also remember, if you're using multiple policies here and multiple different groups and individual users, there is a precedent that gets applied. If a user gets the policy applied directly at the user level, that always takes the precedent over any of the group membership. So if you have applied a policy to me, going to the users, finding me, and then assigning a policy here, and if I'm assigned a different policy or same policy as part of the group membership, then the direct policy that was applied would take the precedent over the group membership. But the point here is you as a team administrator could manage who can create private channels by creating multiple policies. And on top of it, team owners can also decide who can, in their team, can members create private channels, or it's only the owners who would be creating the private channels. So that's one of the settings that is available for the group owners. The thing that we talked about, if you once you delete the private channel, you would be able to restore the private channel just like any other standard channel. You would see the type that you would see the type as displayed is a private channel. You would restoring this would restore the SharePoint site associated with it. So now let's just very quickly go back to the SharePoint site here that's associated with it. As I said, every single private channel would create a whole new SharePoint site, and you could just click open that. That will take you straight to, and the format of the channel or SharePoint site is pretty much the same. The site gets created, a default document library is used, and the folder gets created for it. So as you can see that the name of the SharePoint site is the team name dash whatever the channel name was, and it's using the default documents document library, and underneath there is a folder that is our channel, and then all the content that is shared in the private channel would be stored here. Now at the launch, this was pretty basic site, but now if you would look around, you could see that it actually a sort of fully featured site in terms of you can add pages, news, lists, things like that. So initially it was only the document library list, but site pages could not be added. But now it looks as if that you could add any of the new list, library, pages, news posts, what have you, right? So you get the idea. That's pretty much it, what I wanted to cover. As I said, I'm really, really sorry that I couldn't cover the content that I was initially planning on cover for the Teams Connect and the shared channels. But if you have any questions, before I wrap it up, I wanted to just talk about some of these slides. So again, thank you to all our sponsors. Make sure that you take your time and help our sponsors thank. If you wanted to provide some good feedback or constructive feedback, that's my that's the area that you could use to provide some feedback. There is a raffle and the giveaways, but that requires opt-in registration, but certainly a good way to get some Amazon gift card if you get lucky. I think the last time someone won the #1 prize gave a really good feedback to me. I'm just kidding. With that, I just wanted to say thank you again to attending this session. I hope it was useful. And if you have any questions, you feel free to post them, and then I'll try my best to answer them. If not, I wish everyone a great day.